Nvidia's earnings are out, and the stock is up an incredible 15% off the lows, and it's currently battling for the all-time high. I think part of what the bears do not understand is that if this AI boom is real, we want to be bullish for the next couple of years. This is about 6-7 months old now. And in after hours, the bulls are right. We're up 8% on Nvidia, up as much as about 10 earlier. And that's because they posted a record revenue up 265% on a booming AI business. Looks like Stanley was right, and this guy's a really sharp investor. So what does that mean? Well, it means that the other thing the bears do not understand specifically about Nvidia is that the stock is not really that expensive relative to its traditional performance, meaning today it was priced at 34, and in the last 10 years, it's been at 34 versus Amazon, which again, incredible business, but expensive, more expensive today and more expensive on a trailing basis. So I think that's really important. So the bulls are currently partying like it's 1995. And Loop Capital looks pretty smart right now because they upgraded Nvidia to 1200, which would mean the stock is basically going to double. I want to remind you one more time why I think this AI boom might be real. This is AI video generated content from Marcus Brownlee from about a year ago. This is apparently Will Smith. Does not really look like him, but this is what AI could generate a year ago. And as we start to see more companies find applications for AI chips, like, look at this. This looks really real. The demand and appetite, just like Sam Altman told us, is, at least for him, $7 trillion. Well, NVIDIA is right at the heart of that. All these videos appear really real. So it makes me really wonder whether or not the bears truly understand that it might not be 1995 and we want to be bullish for the next couple of years. That's the essence of today's show. So the other thing I want to show you is the chart update that we looked at yesterday, specifically about Nvidia, because if we now look here to the weekly chart, what do we notice? Well, it's pretty obvious. We're a lot higher than we were before. Yesterday, we talked about the fail where we were below last week's low. Well, now we're well back above that. And because we almost hit the all-time high, I think we hit 745 in after hours, we could actually have a bullish engulfing candle for next week. What is that? It's bullish, just like the thumbnail of today's video suggests. So if that happens, it means that we're going to be at a record high in a bullish engulfing candle. I think that is really strong. And the reason why is because it's feeding through to other ETFs. We talked about SMH and specifically here about, let me just go back to the weekend notes. I mentioned that I believe that the first and second half of the week would be opposite. Well, at least for now. Again, it's only Wednesday after hours, but SMH on a closing basis, it's a failed breakdown. It actually recaptured last week's low. I'm going to ask you for a huge favor. If you could please consider smashing the thumbs up and subscribing to the channel, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you ahead of time. So if we continue the story, SMH looks incredibly strong right now. It's up by about 3.3% in after hours, and it's going to be flirting with new all-time highs. So SMH, Nvidia, all look really good now. If we flip the story over here to QQQ, we also have that failed breakdown. So we actually managed to close back above 425.33, which was last week's low. So that's also a failed breakdown. Whoa, this market appears strong. It appears like it wants to go up. And what is that? Well, I think it's bullish. So QQQ is up by about 1% in after hours. And then finally rounding it out with S&P 500, we actually have an inside bar. So an inside bar means that we're inside the range from the previous week, but we're actually looking like we're going to be flirting with green if we hold these levels into the end of the week, basically 500. Whoa, this market looks strong. It does. And what I want to remind you is that if we go back in time to the weekend video, the other pattern we were talking about, looking at a hollow candlestick pattern, was we only have one other red week since we started our expansion going to late last year in late October and November. So that we have one closed week going back to January, which was red. And then we have one red week last week. Well, if we go back to being green and hollow, well, we could get another expansion, which could last what? Weeks, months? Man, I don't know. This market really wants to go up. And the bears seem like they just want to keep fueling it because they just keep betting against it. And like I mentioned, I just don't think they really understand what's happening here. Because even before I watched that video, I was quite skeptical. I thought Nvidia was priced for perfection. I thought it would be hard to beat it. I certainly didn't think it was 1995. But I adjusted my story, and with everyone positioned one way, If greed and fear continues to push higher, which it did, it was really rocky today, but we're closing up at 70 today, almost getting back into that extreme greed area, which is really important. We've talked about that before. And let's go here to our weekly notes just to round things out. So if we go here, we got FOMC meeting minutes today. We didn't even really focus on it, even though it was the second most important data point for the week. Why? Well, because it showed us that they flagged more concerns, blah, 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 right? Jerome Powell's statement on 60 Minutes is basically the same thing we saw here. So I don't think the market was very surprised, which is the reason why we were able to eke out a gain of 45 cents or 0.1% on the S&P, and then we boomed in after hours. They came in and bought the dip up hard. If we go here to regular trading hours, what do we know? The good old classic cuck, where into the close we hit 493, and then we basically go back to 500. Oh, that good old game. Oh, yes, that good old game. So we talked about all of this on the weekend, the $7 trillion. We talked about the upside for the next couple of years, the life cycle of 1995. The Mag 7 are still the only game in town. Most gains are coming from a couple of stocks, but we'll leave that video with you at the end because I think we talked quite a bit about it. The other thing is companies like Supermicro Computer and ARM, which are some of their investments. But like I mentioned, I think the better way to look at it is just looking at SMH, which is going to be, in my opinion, the most important semiconductor ETF. For an ETF to be up 3%, that's a fairly large move. So what does that mean? It appears like it's a bull market. The Fed is currently in the back seat, and we're focused on companies delivering good earnings. So we got through FOMC meeting minutes. We had Nvidia's earnings today. Again, so far, I haven't listened to the conference call, but the reaction is initially quite bullish. Tomorrow, pre-market, we're going to have European CPI, and we'll have to keep an eye out on that one. Otherwise, we talked about S5FI versus RSP. Let's take a quick check-in on that. Let's look at RSP. So RSP is actually looking pretty good here. And I say that because we have a lot of hollow candles. Hollow candles sometimes might be hard to see on the screen, but it gives us a really important data point that we're actually closing higher than we opened. So I really like that this chart is hollow, even though it might be hard to look at. And then if we compare that to the indicator ahead, the S5FI, we're getting some breadth back in here. This is going to be 1 day delayed. So we're looking at yesterday's data today. And maybe we have an inverse head and shoulders here, which could lead to a potential reversal. Otherwise, Nvidia appears like it's the king of Wall Street. And we got new street target, S&P 500 target upgrades from Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, UBS over the weekend ahead of those Nvidia earnings like we talked about. I think the first and second half of the week will be opposite, which appears like it's the case so far. And then these are converging, which actually is also confirmation. All right, so the weekend deep dive is now here on the left-hand side. If not, subscribe to the channel on the right, and I will see you at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Thank you for your support.